Hi everybody and welcome back to BlackMap VR. Like myself, you may have watched F8, which was Facebook's developer conference, and we were all anticipating the release of the second generation VR headsets from Oculus, not including the Go, but the Rift S and the Quest. The Quest being the first standalone headset, and the Rift S getting a bump up from the Rift that came out 3 years ago. It has been 3 years since we had the first generation of the Oculus, and so everyone was expecting big things, and now that they've been released, there's a lot of hype about the good things that they've brought to the VR world. And when you look at some of the improvements that have been made, there are definitely some. There's been some ergonomic improvements. There's been tracking improvements. The screen resolution is going to look a little bit better, especially on the Rift S. And of course, the first standalone headset, the Oculus Quest, gets rid of tethering your VR headset to a computer and having a cable hang off the back of your head. And so definitely made some steps forward in the VR world. But, can I be honest with you? I was a little underwhelmed. And I've been a little bit surprised at how fanboyish many people in the VR community have been in terms of these headsets. You know, it may just be that there's something new and people are super excited about it and they'll take anything at this point, but I was underwhelmed by the presentation and by the devices that came out, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on them to actually test them, but from what we're seeing in the specs, I'm just not really that impressed, and what I've seen in other people's reviews that have the devices already, just not that impressed. At the end of the day, all we really had on these headsets, in my opinion, was incremental changes. And it's been 3 years. 3 years, that's a long time in the tech industry. Imagine if Apple did something like this, that they said, we're going to stop the production of the iPhone for 3 years, and then in 3 years we'll come back with a new one. Well, when that 3 years was over, people would expect a revolutionary device, right? Large steps forward in technological advancement because it had been 3 years. And to be honest with you, I feel like the Rift has not shown the same kind of strides in 3 years that the VR industry hoped they would be making back when the first generation Rift came out. You know, and there are a lot of compromises on these headsets as well. You think about what hasn't changed, and maybe that'll put it in perspective. So the headsets look exactly the same. They haven't slimmed them down. There's really no new form factor other than some ergonomic stuff. But also, there's nothing really new introduced in the controller space. They're going to be using the same general controllers that were used on the first generation Rift. They're touch controllers. And arguably, the audio experience from the people that have reviewed it already is worse than on the original Rift. And I know that you can put on headphones and that helps, but as far as the built-in audio, it seems to not really be a step forward as far as advancement. The Rift S, at least, is heavier than the original Rift, which means it's likely a little less comfortable to wear over a long period of time, but we're moving in the wrong direction there. We want to go lighter, they're going heavier instead. And with the Quest, yes, I agree that the standalone headset is a great advancement, but if you're going to go out and buy the Quest, you also have to make some serious compromises, and that's in graphical capability. And those graphics make a big difference when it comes to really feeling like you're immersed in the world of virtual reality. And so, yes, it's standalone, yes, it's innovation, but not without some serious compromise. And so I have a couple questions, and I'm sure that we'll have plenty of heated debate around some of these questions because they're provocative, especially for VR enthusiasts. And the first one is this: does this lack of true innovation, if you see it in that perspective, mean that people aren't jumping onto the bandwagon the way that the VR industry originally had hoped? And not only people as in consumers, but also developers, hardware developers and software developers who are necessary for getting virtual reality mainstream, right? Is this a sign that they're not getting on board and that's why the innovation hasn't taken place? Or is this just representative of the fact that VR is a new industry, it's only been out for a couple years still, and that we should expect as it grows into the future that innovation will ramp up because more people will get on board? Let me know what you think Is this a bad sign, or is this just a sign of an emerging technology? Here's another question. Will the innovations of the Quest and the Rift S and the enthusiasm and hype that surrounds them right now bring more people into the VR world, right? Bring VR more mainstream? Or do you think that the real lack of innovation and lack of big steps is kind of leaving people hanging, right? And that there's not going to be that many more people interested in VR in the second generation of headsets than there were in the first generation? And can the VR industry survive, not only survive, but thrive if it's going to take another 2-3 years to come up with a true second generation Rift? Another question. You probably heard that the day after Oculus Quest and Rift S were announced, Valve introduced the Index, which is coming sometime in June. And so will the lack of large steps in innovation on Oculus's side open up the door for Valve to really step in and to take over the lead chair in the VR industry? And then here's kind of another provocative question, and that is Facebook killing Oculus? I don't think it's any secret that the people at Oculus were not huge fans of Facebook before Facebook bought them. There was a lot of controversy. A lot of people thought that they sold out to Facebook. But that's kind of the question. Is Facebook killing Oculus? And will they run it into the ground and leave space for the competitors to do some catching up? Now, Facebook does not have a good history in the hardware business. You remember maybe in 2013, there was a Facebook phone and they partnered with HTC to get into the hardware business, and it was a total flop. Is Oculus going to be the same way? Especially now, and here's the final question, does the departure of Palmer Luckey, really the guy who got VR going in the world again, and Brendan Iribe, another one of Oculus's founders, does their departure from Facebook, is that part of the lack of innovation that we are now seeing in the Rift S and the Quest? So for you VR experts out there, I want to hear your opinions, because personally, I was a little underwhelmed. I'm not on the fanboy level that's just going to accept anything that Oculus puts out and say, oh, this is fantastic. But maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that the tracking, the ergonomics, the resolution in the screens is a big enough advancement, and that's what we should have expected from Oculus, given that the technology is so new. Let me know. Were you underwhelmed, or were you super excited about what they released and what they presented? I'd love to get some good discussion and put out a little bit different perspective than what you've probably been hearing from many other people. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, we do new VR and AR content at least 3 times a week. And so subscribe, leave those comments down below, and get some good discussion going here. Like that video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.